has been punched in the face. But the crisis isn't what you might expect. The government lockdowns could prove to be the most damaging disruption in the history of American education. Parents, teachers, and children have suffered under the weight of a failing public school system for decades. Educational progress halted. Government woke agendas and explicit and inappropriate materials to innocent children are destroying our kids' potential. Amidst this chaos, one state stands tall. Florida, lauded as the top-rated state for education. However, what are we missing? While many of Florida's government-run schools look great on the surface, numerous are struggling. Enter Florida Citizens Alliance, our mission to revolutionize education. Join us in breaking free from the chains of a broken system. Embrace innovation and support positive change. We need your support to reshape the future of education. Together, we can make a difference.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Really brilliant military career, serving 33 years.
Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Good evening. We're going to get started. As we start, I would like to invite Pastor Casey to come up. He's one of the pastors here at the church, and he will do an invocation and welcome you. So thank you, Pastor Casey.
Well, good evening. Good evening. My name's Casey Nallen. I'm one of the preaching elders here at the church, and we just want to welcome you into our service and into our area. And if you need restrooms, they're right out here. Waters are available in the back. But we hope this evening would be beneficial and a blessing. And we are encouraging our church members and our attenders to be involved in political processes because Scripture calls us that we are to be living out our faith in all areas of life, not just in the church and in the four walls of the church, but we are to be going out into our community and living that out in the school system and in our workplaces as well as our political systems. So we just want you to know if you don't have a church home, you're looking for a place to call home that's going to be focused on God's Word, focused on the Bible, as well as involved in the political process where those two intersect, then we would encourage you to check us out. But we are involved and we think that God's kingdom is moving, it is advancing, and it is Christ or chaos. Those are the only options we have before us, and we've seen what life looks like without Christ. And so we desire for our nation to come back to the Lord, and as we do so, it will bring about peace, prosperity, and blessing. So we hope tonight would be a blessing to you. We want you to know a little bit about us, and also we just hope that tonight would be a blessing as we talk about District 81. Let's pray. Lord, we do thank you that we can be involved in the political process in this nation. There's so many other nations that don't have this privilege. Throughout much of history, this privilege has not been available to us. So we thank you and we exercise this privilege. God, we ask that you would rule and reign in local politics, but you would move your people to engage, that you would help us to stand firm for what is true. Without you, there is no absolute moral truth. When we remove the Creator, what happens to our inalienable rights? So God, we ask that we may be grounded, that we may be steadfast, that you would help the church be on mission and engaged. We ask for those tonight to bring clarity to their positions, that you would help us to ask the right questions. And we thank you that we can be involved in such a privilege of electing who would be our governing officials in local elections, state elections, all the way up to the president. And we submit to you, and we ask that we may turn back to you, and we thank you that you are the source of all truth and all goodness, and may we as a nation return back to you. We know where our hope stands. It's in Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen.
Well, I'm excited to announce the young lady who's going to lead us in the pledge. Selah?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A few comments before we get started. You saw, if you were watching, you saw a brief trailer of Florida Citizens Alliance, but we focus on K through 12 education primarily. I won't get into the details of this, but we're both a 501c3 and a 501c4. 501c4 is our action side of what we do, which lets us be a little bit more involved in the election process. Our role tonight is to help voters vote informed. We will be taping this and live streaming it. Just so you're aware. As you notice coming in, we have the supervisor of election office here. If you're not registered to vote, please do. Across the nation, 25 million evangelicals did not vote in the last election. So hopefully, and that I'm told that's pretty consistent with pastors as well. So I urge you, if you're not registered to vote, take the opportunity to register to vote while you're here. If you're registered to vote, get people who you know who aren't to register. We have 3 students from Marco Island Academy that are going to be acting as ushers. Zach Antonarium is right here in the front. He's going to be our timekeeper for tonight. Cassie Letendra where's Cassie? In the back, waving her hand. And then Jessica, well, you guys have some interesting last names. I should speak, right? Vorderstrasse. Did I butcher that too bad? I hope not. Well, thank you, Marco Island Academy, for encouraging you students to be part of this. It's an important thing for our young kids to become involved in our political process, I think. This forum tonight with only 2 candidates. One of the candidates texted me this morning with a medical issue, so she isn't here. But with only 2 candidates, it will offer the opportunity for limited give and take. So rather than just having the candidates state their position, they'll have an opportunity to potentially challenge each other, and the moderators will be in charge of that. We have 2 moderators. On my right, Christina Heuser, and the fellow next to him, Ryan Kennedy. Christina has been working with our team for at least 5 years. She gets very involved in our process. This year, our team, led by the 2 folks up there, but really Christina, evaluated 130 bills before the state legislature. We marked 19 of those as strongly support and got about 7 or 8 of those across the finish line. There's some good things and some bad things that happened, but in general, some good things. So Christina is a constitutional attorney and has a practice here in Collier County. Ryan Kennedy has been with us as an intern for about 3 years before he went off to the private sector for a little bit of time and then decided that he really loved Tallahassee. And so he's our Tallahassee guy, policy and advocacy. So that's a little bit about the background. As you came in, you got 3 things, hopefully. You should have gotten a 3x5 card, and you should have gotten 2 questionnaires. One of those is an issue-based questionnaire that we've asked the candidates to fill out, and all 3 of the candidates have filled those out, but we're not going to release those until after qualification in June. But we wanted you to have a blank form because those are the kinds of questions that we think as voters would be helpful for you to know a little bit about. The other questionnaire is a constitutional survey. We started doing this about 10 years ago, and it's been rather amazing that a significant number of our local officials that are running for office don't think the Constitution really applies at the local level. I can assure you that the two up here do, but an interesting survey was done about 10 years ago by one of our Supreme Court justices. And he asked voters in an official survey to name the 5 rights in the First Amendment. Only 2% of the voters in Florida could do that. So if you don't know your rights, how do you know when they'll be taken away? And I would argue that we saw them taken away big time in the recent pandemic. So we give you those as kind of a refresher. Many of us haven't looked at the Constitution since maybe high school, and so we urge you to use those as an opportunity to catch up. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to open and 90 seconds to close. We'll ask questions for about 45 minutes. The two moderators will, and they'll alternate. They will have an opportunity to question the candidate to explain, or candidates will have an opportunity, limited-wise, to challenge their opponent. We ask that they do that with the utmost courtesy and professionalism, which I'm sure they will. At about the 40-minute level, we will take a 2-minute pause, and I'll explain at the time. We're going to do a straw ballot, and then they'll have an opportunity to close. And then I'm going to ask you to stay in your seat after that, because we're going to come back, and I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about Amendment 4 that's going to be on the ballot. Amendment 4 is the abortion amendment that's going to be on the ballot. So we'd like to give you an opportunity to at least understand what's going on there. So without any further ado, Christina and Ryan.
Thank you, Keith.
Take it away.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Yvette, Greg, thank you for being here this evening. We're going to get started with 90-second opening statements, and you have a timekeeper down here, so he's going to be holding up a yellow card when you're getting close to time, and then a red card when it's time to stop. And we here at Florida Citizens Alliance believe in chivalry, so ladies first. Yvette, you may start.
Okay. Good evening. I want to start by expressing my gratitude to the Florida Citizens Alliance for hosting this forum and all of you for being here tonight. My name is Yvette Benaroch, and I am running to be your next state representative. I am not a politician. I am a proven community leader and a dedicated grassroots activist. 20 years ago, I arrived here from Puerto Rico with nothing but a suitcase filled with dreams and hopes. Today, I stand before you asking to serve as your next state representative. As an Air Force veteran, mom, and a business owner, my life has been dedicated to service to our country, our community, and our families. My campaign is rooted in the principles that make America great: liberty, personal responsibility, and justice. Running for the Florida House, I am committed to enhancing educational opportunities, supporting local businesses, and protecting our unique environment, all through the lens of constitutional conservatism and limited government. This country is a land of opportunity where anyone can achieve something from nothing. Let's continue this legacy by working together for a prosperous, free, and thriving Florida. Thank you for your trust, your time, and your passion for our community and our state.
Greg, you can proceed with your opening.
All right, thank you very much. And I join in thanking the Florida Citizens Alliance and Pastor Casey and the Marco Family Church for hosting this event. I am a retired Caterpillar executive and an attorney, and I'm loving life here. I've been on Marco Island City Council for 4 years, and people are asking me, why do you want to run for state rep? And I'm a real lover of history, student of history. And 248 years ago, Thomas Paine said, "These are the times that try men's souls." And today, no less than then, we're in such a time. There is so much evil and wrong-headedness emanating not just from Washington, but all our institutions, our prominent institutions, media, tech, that are polluting the minds of our children and causing this whole country to head in a very bad direction. And Edmund Burke said, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." So I feel called to come out and do something to fight the nonsense, to be honest with you. And there are so many examples, but one was just provided for us last week. The Biden administration rewrote Title IX regulations to include gender identity. This means, actually, and there's harassment involved, if someone says that Steve is not Stephanie, they can be guilty of harassment, and they can be thrown out of school, and they can be guilty of crimes that would get them fired if they're administrators. This is nonsense. It needs to stop. It's not going to happen in Florida on my watch.
Well, thank you so much. And for our first question, I'd like to ask you both, and we'll start with Greg this time for the response. Can you tell us about your faith, whatever you're comfortable sharing about that, and how that informs your worldview, and how that will impact you if you are to serve in Tallahassee as the legislator for District 81?
Yes. So I was raised with not much religious formation. When I went to the Naval Academy, I realized I was missing something and actually went there with a friend of mine who was a staunch Catholic. And he encouraged me to get some instruction, which I did. And I actually was received into the church, had my baptism while I was there at the academy. And it was just like people telling me what I already believed in many respects. And I've been blessed to have the formation of the church since then. I went to Notre Dame after getting a medical discharge from the academy, studied Catholic social teaching, and that forms a lot of the basis for my thinking, including the principle of subsidiarity, which I think is remarkable. And Pope Pius XI wrote about, in Quadragesimo Anno, the condemnation of socialism and the principle that a higher level of government or society should not do what a lower level of government or society could do instead, closer to the people. And so I'm very much a believer in that, and so am very suspicious of much of what the federal government does and even a lot of what the state government does, because it should be down at the lower level with the people. That's consistent with the 9th and 10th Amendment as well. And I try to live my beliefs every day with a strong prayer life.
Thank you, Greg. Yvette, same question for you.
Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. Please tell us about your faith, whatever aspects of that you're comfortable sharing, and how that will inform your world, or does inform your worldview, and how it will impact you in your role as state representative if you are to be elected.
So my faith is what guides my life. It's the foundation of this country. It's what gave us a right. God is the center of everything, and without that, we have nothing. We see why God has been taken out of schools and government agencies, because they have actually replaced God with government. And my worldview is simple. God will guide me, and I will do what's right, even if I have to stand alone. And integrity, it's what my father always say, you take to the grave. And that's how I plan to, when I serve, that's the principle that I will use. And of course, the impact it will have in my policy making, God will always guide me in the right direction. The Constitution will give me the frame. And I will also think about how my policy will impact people. Because after all, that's who we'll be serving and representing. Lately, politics is transactional, and I think we need to worry more about the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my first question is, when it comes to when the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act was passed, it revised the age limit for buying firearms in the state of Florida to 21. Do you believe that this was the right decision? And what will you do about it when either of you become elected? And I'll first start with Greg.
Yeah, I believe that was overreach. I believe that constitutional right, Second Amendment constitutional right should extend to 18-year-old adults as well. And so I disagree with that.
That?
Yeah, I do believe our constitutional right for our Second Amendment was violated there. We have to stand for truth, and we cannot give in, because the reality is that a very little percentage of students will actually commit crimes in the school system. And you cannot disarm or you cannot raise the age, because everybody has rights in this country, and I think government sometimes forgets about that. So in the name of safety, we cannot punish every 18-year-old that was a responsible gun owner because one bad actor. And guess what? Guns don't kill people, people kill people. And it's because we have a lot of mental issues that are not addressed in this country, and it is time that we address them, and we need to stop looking the other way. Thank you.
So the next question will start with Yvette, and it comes from the audience, and I'm going to take some liberties and add on to the question. So it's in two parts, so bear with me. The question from the audience is, what is your opinion about the 2020 election results? Was it fraudulent? And I'd like you to also address in your response if you see any flaws in our election system here in Florida, and if so, what you in the state legislature can do to address those and make sure that we have the most secure elections possible.
So I do believe that our 2020 election had fraud. Ever since I was a little girl, I remember that dead people would vote. So it's been going for a long time, and people just didn't pay attention until 2020 because we had the best president that we had in 2016. And in 2020, they had to actually steal that election. And that's exactly what happened. Humans never change. That's human nature. So we need to make sure that the legislature provides the avenues to have safe elections. Our governor has done great things with the legislature in reference to trying to fix the problem. I know there's more work that we need to do. With technology, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But when I'm up there, election integrity, it's important to me because they could steal an election when I'm running, so I don't want that to happen. So yes, that's a priority for me, election integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, back in 2007, Jimmy Carter said that mail-in balloting was the single greatest risk for fraud. And I believe he's right. And we, in 2020, massively increased the number of mail-in ballots with very few controls and very few checks on the system. Usually they're supposed to actually check handwriting samples to determine that those mail-in ballots are valid. In almost every state where the number of mail-in ballots was increased, nobody checked those. And there was no process for doing it. And so you almost were asking for fraud in that situation. And again, there were no controls in the system to even measure against in most cases. The second issue, of course, was the incredible complicity of the media and the press and big tech in suppressing one of the biggest stories out there, and they did it repeatedly, suppressing conservative voices and also suppressing stories like the Hunter Biden laptop, which was illegitimate and wrong and unconstitutional in my view. So many things done there. In terms of Florida, Florida's probably got the best election system in the country right now. I would say it does, but that doesn't mean there are opportunities for improvement. There are. I would say a couple of things. First of all, people should be required to prove their citizenship at the time they register. That does not happen. So you need to have people bring their birth certificates. And then when they vote, they always need to have their ID checked. I would do those two things. Afterwards, we should have strong audits of the results.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, this question is for each of you from the audience. What do you believe are the most important issues facing Collier County citizens? And with that, along with that, what initiatives do you plan on championing in Tallahassee? And how do you ensure that the people's voices are heard during that process? And, we'll start with Yvette.
So I've been a grassroots activist since 2018, so I've been here 20 years. I know my community, I've been out there, and I know about the issues. They're different. Our district is very diverse, so it depends which area of the district you ask. But a few of those that I would mention would be education. And that's actually a priority for me because I do believe if we can fix the education system, we can fix most of the problems we have because those kids will graduate, become better leaders, better citizens, and will govern with righteous attitudes. Another big issue, it's insurance, which actually we have done great things in the legislature. There's more to be done. Water quality, it's important for our area. And I know Marco Island is big on short-term rentals. So the diversity of issues are depending on where you are in the district, but I will listen to every constituent and address those issues when I get there. Thank you.
The first and most important issue is freedom. That's the reason the government exists, to protect our freedoms and our liberties, and also to keep us secure in our property. And the freedom that we enjoy is under assault like never before. Justice Gorsuch said that what happened to us during the pandemic was the greatest single peacetime invasion of our constitutional rights in the history of the country. And so, freedom first. After that, it's very clear that the rest of the country recognizes it because so many people want to be here. So we have to make sure the infrastructure is ready for the people who are coming here. And Governor DeSantis is doing a fabulous job. We're 14 years ahead of the spending plan on infrastructure right now. We have to be because there's so much growth happening, and we can't keep the people from coming. We can manage it, but we can't keep them from coming. Third thing that is very, very important, I talked to incoming Speaker Perez, asked him what are his priorities. He said there are three: property insurance, and property insurance. It's incredibly important, and we have to deal with that. There's no silver bullet, although the legislature made huge steps last year with malpractice and tort reform. Still have much work to do, but that is an area that requires our attention.
Thank you both. Another very important issue that hopefully you will have the opportunity to address when you're in the legislature is abortion. And I say hopefully because Amendment 4, if it passes, will strip the legislature of all ability to restrict abortion at all. And I know, sorry, Keith, I don't want to steal your thunder. I know you're going to talk about this at the end of our program. But assuming that Amendment 4 fails, can you talk to us about what action you as a legislator would take regarding abortion, where, if at all, you think it's appropriate for the legislature to draw the line? We hear a lot of talk about banning after a certain period of gestation. So I'd like to know each of your stances on that issue with as much detail and particularity as you can give. And Greg, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I'm very pro-life, always have been. I think the conversation on abortion is distorted by what's going on with Amendment 4, because it does not recognize that in that debate there are two lives in issue, the child and the mother. I don't think any intelligent conversation can happen on the abortion issue until that is recognized. So to me, two lives are involved. Then the question, and I've talked to Father Orsi about this issue, and he's made the point that sometimes you don't want the best to be the enemy of the good. If you're too restrictive on this issue, you might drive the population in another direction. I think that's the reason we're stuck with this Amendment 4, is because perhaps we had not done enough work educating the population on what actually is involved in the abortion procedures to get popular support for a 6-week ban. And so I would support the state law as it is, but I think we have an awful lot of work to do to persuade people that that is the right position to take.
Thank you. Yvette, same question, please.
So a constitutional amendment about abortion, it's no. It doesn't belong there. The states, through the legislation, should take care of that. And actually, we did. I've been to Tallahassee 2 times. The first time for the 15-week bill that had no exceptions, it passed. And then the second one, the 6-week, that actually includes exceptions. And I was there also to speak on behalf of that bill. And actually, it's going into effect in May. So I want everyone to know that there's big problems with the language, and I want everyone to be out there telling people to vote no on that amendment, because viability, what is viability? Who decides that? 20 weeks, 25 weeks, 9 months, when the baby's almost out? Because that's what's going to happen. Parental notification. As a parent, I have the right to know what my child is doing, and they took that away. So please make sure you spread the word, vote no on Amendment 4. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the issues we at the Florida Citizens Alliance have been talking about for a while is the sexually explicit materials, the obscene materials in our schools. Within that, we've suggested a few different revisions to this. Can you tell me what, looking at the landscape of what's happened so far, both in Collier County but also statewide, where do we go from here? And I'll sort of start with that.
So I am actually the chair for Moms for Liberty in Collier County. In 2020, when we finally saw what was being taught to our children in school, and it is disgusting. Actually, I have 4 books in my bag that I carry to show people the sexually explicit material in our schools. Collier County, we have been able to remove over 300 books that are deemed pornographic. The problem is that right now, and one of the things that I want to do when I go to the legislature is to work on that Miller test. Miller test is what they use to actually decide if a book belongs in the school or not. And it wasn't never meant to be used in with children. It was more for adults. But of course, the courts always get involved, sometimes in things that they shouldn't get involved. And now we have a problem. So one of the things that I want to do is to make sure that obscene material is not in the schools. I want to get rid of that Miller test, because let me tell you, some of the stuff, children do not need to see, and I'm going to apologize, oral sex in books to be successful in life. They need to read, write, and learn math. That's what's important. And actually, 60% of our kids can't even read, add, or write. So that is my take on that, and I will make sure that those books are out and they don't belong there.
That analysis, I think, is largely correct, but the one thing that I would add to it is that the Miller test is a function of the Supreme Court obscenity rules, and the third piece of it is improperly applied to children where it doesn't need to be applied to children. It's incorporated in the Florida statutes, and that piece needs to be removed or adjusted. It can be, it's a piece which basically said if there's any literary value associated with it, then it can stay in the schools and not be deemed obscene. And that allows an awful lot of terrible stuff that kids should not be seen in because it's deemed to have some literary value. That part of the Florida statutes, which incorporates the Miller test from the Supreme Court, needs to change, and I will champion that change in Tallahassee.
So speaking of the Constitution, one of our favorite subjects at Florida Citizens Alliance, can you tell us what you view your role as a state legislator mentor in engaging with the Constitution because recently in Collier County and in Marco Island, we enacted the Bill of Rights Sanctuary, or here it went by another name, the Freedom Zone.
Constitutionally protected freedom zone.
Yes, thank you. And we heard a lot of people on the dais, not just here, but in the county as well, telling us that only the Supreme Court can understand the Constitution. And I'd like to know what you all think about that, and I'll supplement that with an audience question. How will you balance input from we the people with the Constitution and also your viewpoint when deciding how to vote on legislation? And we'll start with Yvette.
So it is simple. We follow the Constitution. If it's unconstitutional, if it's infringing in people's rights, you don't do it. It's as simple as that. Our rights come from God, not from the government. And lately, sometimes we feel scared and we feel that government, it's going to fix everything. It happened with COVID, and I can tell you, we cannot give it an inch. Whatever you give, you're never going to get back. So it is important that we stand on principle, and that's what I plan to do when I get up there, stand on principle. And like I said at the beginning, even if I have to stand alone, I'm willing to do that. Congressman Donalds, which actually has endorsed me, did that while he was in the legislature when he voted no for that Second Amendment infringement bill. So that's who I am, that's what I'm going to do. And how do you balance? Well, the Constitution is for everyone. Everyone has rights, and that's how you balance it. If it's unconstitutional, you don't do it. As simple as that. Thank you.
We all take, as public servants, and I took as a member of the Marco Island City Council, an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. It's absolutely absurd for people to say that only the Supreme Court has the authority and capability of interpreting the Constitution. We have an obligation ourselves to apply the Constitution, enforce it, and not to disobey it. And so in supporting the constitutionally protected freedom zone of Marco Island and the Health Care Bill of Rights, we were affirming our constitutional rights against the incredible overreach that we experienced during the COVID time period. And I was happy to have the support of a huge number of community members to get out there and say, we will not participate when the federal government engages in overreach in violation of our constitutional rights. We won't do it on Marco Island. And we had great support from the population of the city. Did not have any involvement from my opponent in this situation. It was an important issue in front of the city. I wish we had had that. Nevertheless, we vindicated those rights as the county has done, and all of us have that obligation to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. It is not just the Supreme Court, and they've done a darn lousy job of it over the last 100 years. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah. He's been in council since, 4 years now, and now when he's running, he champions a freedom zone bill. You know, I don't do political spectacle. I've been a grassroots activist since 2018. I have a track record, and this is why I have many endorsements from important leaders in our state government, federal government, and great leaders in our community. So that would be my answer.
I just asked, which pieces of legislation have you enacted?
Very many. We don't have enough time to actually go through all of them, but I can email them to you.
Thank you. So, I think one of the issues that a lot of people care about within Florida is, of course, when it comes to the food we have, the land we have, the water quality. And from an audience, they talked about what's your stance on banning geoengineering. And with that, I'd also like to mention what is your stance on genetically modified food and also labeling food correctly from where it's from?
Who does that go to?
Greg, you can go first.
Okay. You know, I am reluctant to ban things. That's something that they're doing a lot of in Washington. Until I see a persuasive case to ban something, I'm going to be hesitant to do it. because that is trampling on rights. Some of these things should perhaps be banned, but I'm not persuaded yet that I've seen evidence that suggests that these things should be prohibited. I do think truth in labeling and extensive labeling is pretty much the law right now, federally and locally, and I think that those labeling requirements are good. You could perhaps do a little bit better on that. I'd entertain those ideas, although primarily the labeling is a federal issue. So I'm hesitant to ban anything until I see a pretty compelling case to do so. Haven't seen that yet.
So we need to pay attention, because if government controls the food supply, we're done. It happens in many socialist and communist countries. So we have to make sure we protect our agriculture, our land, make sure that people still grow things here, so that we can make sure that we don't depend in other countries to have food, because that's the way they can control us. So I will make sure that we protect our ag industry. It is important. It is actually a national security issue, and we need to be paying attention to that. Labeling food correctly, it is important that people can make choices, but they need to be educated and they need to know what actually is in the food. And I think I do agree with that, so that is my stance on that. Thank you.
Thank you. In the news lately, we've been seeing a lot of images from college campuses across the nation, and I'm wondering if you can comment on what the state legislature can or should do to protect students, both their safety as well as their First Amendment rights. What's the appropriate way for universities to balance those things? And we'll start with you, Greg.
Okay. Actually, the laws are in place to protect citizens. Our governor is enforcing them, and hooray for him. You know, the contrast between the Florida schools and Columbia and these other schools where this violence is going on, and the anti-Semitism and the trespassing is amazing. Florida State, they turned on the sprinklers. That's the right thing to do when people are occupying this stuff. You know, they are entitled to no deference when they're trespassing. They're entitled to no deference when they are threatening other people or blocking streets. They should be arrested, and the laws are present to make that happen. So I think the laws just need to be enforced, just as they need to be enforced in those other states where they're letting the inmates run the asylum.
And we will agree on that. The majority of the issues are always the enforcement of the laws. Most of the time, we don't need more laws. We don't need more ordinances. We just need to enforce what we have. So if we follow the law, enforce the law, I think we wouldn't have as many issues as we're having. Florida, we're lucky to live here. We don't have a lot of those issues like other states have, although we still have them, especially in our Jewish communities. So I would say that we need to make sure that we enforce the laws and we arrest and we do what we need to do to keep our students safe. Thank you.
So it was already brought up tonight, but related to Title IX, the Biden administration put out new Title IX changes, which right now the governor and the DOE has said that they're not going to follow those new updates, and then they're going to file a lawsuit, which they did. My question is, if the lawsuit is not successful, what do you believe your role in the state legislature should be to combat those changes? And I'll start with that.
So our governor already said that we will not comply, so I will definitely be with him and not comply. We've been fighting for women's safe spaces for a long time, for a few years now, and actually we've been able to pass legislation regarding that, because the reality is that they want to erase women, and we cannot allow that. I mean, we have fought so hard to be where we are today, actually to the point where I'm sitting here and I can tell you that I want to be your next state representative. That wouldn't be possible if we didn't fight like we've been fighting all these years. So I will continue to fight to make sure. Also, we have to be realistic. You know, lies have become truth. The truth is that there's only two sexes, male and female, period. That is it, no more than that. That's how God created us, and we need to stop looking the other way and accepting mental health issues like they're normal, because our children have been normalizing behavior that they should never be normal. Pedophilia, mental issues, no, we need to tackle that because our children are suffering, and I will not allow that to happen.
Right.
We should follow the science. There are XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes. And one is female, the other is male. That's the way it works. And, just because Steve wants to be called Stephanie doesn't mean that that is something to which Steve is entitled to hear. And according to the federal rules just promulgated, it is. And it's unlawful for you not to give them their preference. Shoot, in Utah a couple weeks ago, they had the furries out, and they want to be referred to as animals, and they want to be deferred to in their craziness of believing they're animals. But it's really not much more crazy than believing you're a male if you're a female, or vice versa. So I applaud the governor. On my watch in the state legislature, we will never comply with that. We will use every tool and every weapon to fight it, and we will make the feds enforce it.
Thank you. So we have two audience questions that I'm going to combine. We've heard a lot of alignment in your responses. So a member of the audience has asked that you explain the differentiating factors that make you the best choice for state rep, and I'd ask that you do that with the utmost civility and decorum. And as part of your response, can you please share which branch of the military you served in and what your experience was? And we'll start with Yvette.
So like I mentioned in my opening, I've been a grassroots activist since 2018. I've helped in many campaigns to elect great Republicans like President Trump, Governor DeSantis, Congressman Donald, Senator Scott. I've played the ground game. I've traveled the state on my own time and my own dime, educating Hispanics about the value of conservative values and how Republicans actually align with their beliefs. And we've been very successful with that. I am the best candidate because I know what I bring to the table. I've been doing it since 2018. I have worked on the ground. I have helped elect Republicans. And the most important thing is I've been here 20 years. I am rooted into this community. I know this community very well. I have community service from food pantry to hurricane relief funds. I am not a politician. And now I know that with the relationships I have built up in the state legislature, I'm going to hit the ground running, because that's what it is all about. It's about relationships and making sure you have people that support you up there to get things done.
At what branch of the military did you serve in, and what was your experience in the military?
So I was in the U.S. Air Force. I served during Operation Desert Storm. I had a top secret clearance, and I was a Morse system operator, which actually I copied Morse code during the Desert Storm War, intercepted those communications.
Thank you. And Greg, the same two questions for you, please.
Yeah. To start with, I was a very patriotic Reagan fan back when I was 17 years old, pounded the pavement for him in Indianapolis and South Bend in a 1976 campaign. My love of country motivated me to apply to the service academies. I was accepted to all three. Went to the Naval Academy because they kind of treated me the worst. And so I went there, played football for them. I had two massive injuries while I was in training that led to my discharge. They diagnosed me as a hemophiliac, so I wasn't able to stay beyond 19 months. But I got through plebe year, which is what John McCain said got him through the Hanoi Hilton in Vietnam. It was definitely the worst part. And in any event, then I changed gears, went to Notre Dame, and I ran Reagan's campaign at Notre Dame. Then I went to the White House. I worked in the Reagan White House for 7 months. Did that before I went to law school, went on to law school, then practiced law for 11 years, labor and employment law, then was hired by one of my clients, worked for Caterpillar for 22 years, rose to the highest levels of that company, and retired running a division with a $10 billion P&L, 10,000 employees, running 72 facilities in 18 states and 18 different countries. Talking about knowing how to get things done, I had to know how to get things done to do that. And before having that job, I'd never had an operational role. I figured it out and was breaking records for the company doing it. I've got a history of actually getting things done. On City Council, I've gotten massive things done as well. I'll just mention this. In the 4 years on City Council, we've cut property taxes by 27%, keeping tax bills flat for our citizens, while municipalities and counties all over the state have let them go up. And we maintained a AAA credit rating. True conservative government in action. That's what you'll see from me in Tallahassee as well, working to keep property taxes down there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So of late, the past few years, we've seen a lot of divergence from both the founding fathers, our Constitution. We've talked about some of that stuff tonight. One of the audience questions is, in your view, what role should the founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington have on American society today? And I'll also add on to that, who is your favorite founding father? So, Greg, you can start first.
Yeah. You know, I struggle with this because there are so many who are so admirable. But I'd say Thomas Jefferson, just because of his intense suspicion of government and his view that that government which governs best governs least. That spirit is represented in the 9th and 10th Amendments as well. And would that we followed Jefferson's philosophy more intensely in this day and age. And, you know, one of the questionnaires that Keith put out to us, and you all have those questionnaires, did you read all these documents, including the Great Remonstrance and the Federalist Papers and everything else? In order to answer yes, I went back and read the darn things. I read them all. And the Federalist Papers are great. What's interesting is the Anti-Federalist Papers are just as interesting because they're predicting that the federal government would be too powerful and too strong, and eventually we turn into a tyranny. Wow, they were prescient.
That?
I would say Madison. I just kind of like the way he kind of knew the dangers of the factions and why a republic was needed. And also when it came to explaining the Constitution and why they had to like the founding documents because of tyranny. So Madison, it's probably my favorite founding father.
So keeping with that theme of the Constitution, I have a two-part question for you. What is your understanding of the Supremacy Clause? Does it mean that every law passed by the United States Congress is superior to any law passed by the Florida legislature? And what is your understanding of the principle of federalism, and how will you work as a legislator to protect and preserve federalism? We'll start with Greg.
Okay. The Supremacy Clause does state that federal law basically is superior to conflicting state law. It was also used in Marbury versus Madison in a way which, contrary to the text, says that the Supreme Court has the power to determine whether congressional enactments are lawful or not, and created the principle of judicial review. It doesn't, by its terms, apply to acts of Congress. It does apply to the states. And I think that there were good reasons to argue based on the 9th and 10th Amendment that that did not give too much power to the federal government, because those powers not specifically enumerated were reserved to the states and to the people. The unfortunate thing, however, is that that has been completely ignored and overturned by the Supreme Court, particularly in the New Deal era, and now there are practically no constraints on what the federal government can do except their own whims. I think that's contrary to the way the Constitution should be, and contrary to the way it was written, but that's now the way it is interpreted.
Yvette?
So the Supremacy Clause establishes that the Constitution, federal laws, and treaties made under the authority constitute the supreme law of the land. However, the clause doesn't explicitly grant the federal government or the Supreme Court the power to determine the constitutionality of laws passed by Congress. This is the power known as judicial review and was established by the Supreme Court itself in the landmark case Marbury versus Madison in 1803. So the judicial review allows the Supreme Court to interpret the Constitution and to invalidate any laws, federal, state, that the court deems to be in conflict with the Constitution. So it's very simple. If the powers are with the state, the powers of the federal government are very limited, and that's what I believe.
Thank you. At this time, Keith Flaw is going to come up and talk to everybody about the straw poll. Keith?
Can you hear me? Yes. Our ushers are going to be handing out the straw ballots now. It's the honor system. Each one of you will get one ballot. We ask you to only vote one time. We've had some issues in the past where people seem to think the ends justify the means. Again, honor system. They will pass out these ballots right now, and you'll have an opportunity to select the candidate that you feel best represents your views going forward. We have also included on this the top 2 issues to you. So think about that, and please write down, because we'll publish these results tomorrow, not only who won the absolute ballot, but what are the top 2 issues that are important to you as voters here, mostly all Collier County, but mostly Marco Island, I would guess. So that's the request. So the ladies are passing those out now before we go to the close. Okay?
Thank you, Keith. And with that, we're going to move into closing remarks. And since Yvette started first, we'll have Greg start first on closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard a lot from, you've heard a lot from the 2 of us saying what we are going to do in Tallahassee. One of us has spoken about what we've actually accomplished before that. And I want you to kind of bear in mind, too, that none of us knows what's ahead of us if we get to Tallahassee. Yeah, we want to be able to hit the ground running, but this is something that, speaking to the people who've gone through this themselves, they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. And I do have a lot of experience going into situations that I had no idea what I was doing before. I've had several jobs in my career that were the first jobs ever created in the company I had. I had to go figure it out. And I've done that. And I went into operations after having a career in HR and law and excelled there, knowing nothing about it, because I learned what buttons to push to get results. And that's what you're looking for in Tallahassee. You're looking for someone who gets results. And I am committed to getting there. I want to close with something that kind of highlights the situation I think we're in today and why it's so important that people who believe as you do and who believe as Yvette and I do, because we don't disagree on much, that we have to get there and get things done. Alexis de Tocqueville was a French nobleman, and he traveled the country in the 1830s and 1840s. Best analysis of America you'll ever read, I think, even though it's that long ago. And this was, I think, one of the final points in his entire book. Not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits flame with righteousness did I understand the secret of her genius and power. America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great. We now are struggling to see if we've got enough good people left to keep this country great. I pray and hope that we do, but this is a time for all of us to stand up. Thank you very much.
So as we conclude today, let me be clear. Our country is in a spiritual battle, requiring warriors with servant hearts that are willing to stand for truth, not just politicians. My name is Yvette Benaroche, and I am prepared to be that warrior. In today's political landscape, where appearances often overshadow truth, I stand committed to honesty and effective leadership. Endorsed by Congressman Byron Donalds and numerous state leaders, I am ready to hit the ground running, uphold our conservative values, and ensure the well-being of our district and our state. My deep roots here in this community connect me to every corner of our community, reinforcing my dedication to represent you. We need leaders who embody integrity and passion, not just rhetoric. While financial resources are essential in campaigning, deep pockets should not be the deciding factor in our elections. Our district deserves a representative chosen by the strength of their commitment, not the size of their wallet. I'm here to serve with a heart full of passion, not to seek a title. I ask for your vote and invite you to join our campaign. Every contribution, no matter the size, supports our mission and helps level the playing field. We're the campaign for the people. Please visit our website at YvetteForFlorida.com to learn more about me and our campaign. Thank you for your trust. Bet on the vet. Vote for Yvette. God bless you. God bless the great state of Florida, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you. I think I only need one of those. First of all, I'd like to thank our two moderators. You did a great job, so thank you. Running for political office takes a huge amount of courage. And so I thank you both for standing up for the values that you represent and being willing to jump into the foxhole, because it's going to get messy. It's guaranteed when one of you gets elected, it will be a super challenge. So thank you again both for joining us tonight. We are going to be doing a second forum in Naples. We wanted to do this one before some of you get away for the summer. And we have one scheduled in Naples at the New Hope Ministries Church on June 6th. So you're welcome to join us. Next week in the same location, we are doing a school board forum. We have two districts that are up for grabs, school district wise. So I urge you to come back and vote informed on what's going on in our education system. I can't help myself. 40% of our kids in Collier County cannot read and do math at grade level. 75% of our third graders in Collier County cannot read at a level 4 or 5, and 35% of them are functionally illiterate. You really need to be paying attention. You pay property taxes, and you're funding that level of what's happening. So please join us next week. I want to take a couple minutes. You mentioned Amendment 4. Amendment 4, the Florida Supreme Court on April 1st, put out a decision to allow Amendment 4, the abortion amendment, on the ballot. It is very deceptive. you and I can have a discussion about whether life begins at conception or 6 weeks or 12 weeks. I would tell you with all sincerity, that's an irrelevant discussion to have today if you look at the amendment that's on the ballot. It does not define viability. What does that mean? That means abortion can happen right up to the time of birth. It says that, and it's a big or, it says, or if your healthcare provider believes you should have for any reason. Well, healthcare providers today in Florida include some 50 categories, including your massage therapist. Let me say that again, 50 categories. So if this amendment passes, literally anybody in Florida without any safety regulations, because this amendment would take away all the legislature's ability to put safety in play. So anybody could perform an abortion in their home without any safety values. That's the amendment that the left has put on us. So I urge you to pay attention, get involved. I can't tell you to vote for or against because we're a C4, but I would tell you that I think the church has an important role to play, as do each of you. And if this amendment were voted on tomorrow, I believe it would pass. And somebody just mentioned it. Part of this amendment is we all want to protect our kids. Part of this amendment is it protects the right that's currently in statute for notification, but it does not protect, which is in statute today, consent of the parent. So literally, if this passes, a parent or guardian of a minor only needs to be notified. They do not have to have consent, and today in Florida they're required to have consent. So it takes away the parents' rights to be actively involved in that. So I've got some flyers here and some information that I will put out front. You're welcome to grab a copy of it. The last thing I want to mention is you came in, I got two things to mention. As you came in, you saw a short video of who Florida Citizens Alliance are, and you also saw a really short video by General Flynn. We are hosting a watch party on the 17th at the Alamo Gun Range upstairs with the General Flynn documentary. I watched that. My wife and I went up to see that. It is very, very powerful. But what it demonstrates is what the federal government can do to each and every one of us if they choose. And I urge you, it will cost you $35. We'll provide some popcorn and some wine and water if you choose. But come watch that video. General Flynn's brother will be there, Joe Flynn, and we're hoping to be able to Skype the general in. He's on a 38 stop tour around the nation right now. So it's on the 17th at the Alamo, and you can go on our website. It's going to start at 6:30 to 8:30. It's really an important, it's so important to see what the federal government is actually doing and can do to each one of us. So I want to again thank the candidates for participating, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. This is so important that you vote informed, and we're delighted to be part of that, helping you do that. So thank you and have a great evening.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career.